Hello and welcome to Croxon's Historical Pub Tours. My name is John and behind the camera is Jill. Today we are going to visit 7 pubs plus some places of historical interest. We'll start at Temple Tube Station and walk through the area. All the pubs featured in this tour are fairly close together, so not much walking will be required. Nevertheless, we will be visiting some wonderful pubs as well as delving into the fascinating history of the area and the organisation that gave the area its name. So let's get started. The Harrow is Grade 2 listed and was built in the early 18th century as 2 houses. It has a Georgian frontage with hanging baskets and a pub sign of a horse ploughing a field. It has 2 bars and a dining room split into 2 sections. The main bar is on the ground floor and has half wooden panelling on the lower half of the walls with wallpaper higher up that is further decorated with historical prints. The bar front is to the right as you enter and has wooden panelling. On the opposite wall there is a fireplace with a large Charrington mirror above it. The room extends to a narrow section deeper into the building. The tiny carpeted saloon bar is accessed by a short flight of stairs. Before the 2 premises were joined, this section was apparently a tailor shop. Upstairs there is an elegant dining room with completely panelled walls decorated with a number of historical prints. A panelled bar front, a curved mirror above a fireplace and wooden floors. There's a second adjoining section to the dining room similarly decorated. There's also a small beer garden at the rear. It's a friendly pub and the various levels make for an interesting place to visit. Please be aware that the pub is closed at weekends. The temple church was built by the Knights Templar, an order of crusading monks founded in 1118 to protect pilgrims travelling to and from the Holy Land, and who became one of the most powerful orders in Christendom. They left their first London home in Holborn in 1161, and this second site may have already been established by then, with the first burial here occurring in 1163. The lead coffin of Geoffrey de Mandeville, 1st Earl of Essex, who had died in 1144, but being excommunicated had lain unburied until the excommunication was posthumously reversed, was buried in the porch before the west door of the temple. As the English headquarters of the order, the temple consisted of the church, 2 halls, cloisters and domestic buildings with access to the Thames. The church is in 2 parts, the round and the chancel. The round church was in use by 1163 and was consecrated in 1185 by the Patriarch of Jerusalem and was modelled on the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. A new chancel was built in 1240. There are 9 effigies in the floor of the round, including William Marshal, Earl of Pembroke, who died in 1219. William Marshal served 4 kings, 5 if we include Henry the Young King, and was chief advisor to King John and regent in the minority of his son Henry III, and was famously named as the best knight that ever lived due to his military prowess and his loyalty. His dying words were, "I cannot defend myself against death." During the Templars' occupation, the walls of the church were brightly painted. Metallic plating on the ceiling reflected candlelight, banners cascaded down the columns, and the effigies themselves were brightly coloured. The temple church is a royal peculiar. This is a church that belongs directly to the monarch rather than belonging to a diocese as with a parish church. The lead member of clergy in the temple church is called the Master of the Temple, a reference to the head of the Order of the Knights Templar. Despite the 12th century origin of the church, it has undergone an awful lot of restoration over the centuries, particularly in the 19th century, and it was also very badly damaged during the last war and required considerable restoration and rebuilding work. Nevertheless, it contains spectacular stained glass, historic memorials and stunning architecture. It is a beautiful, atmospheric and interesting and well worth a visit.
It's worthwhile here mentioning the Inns of Court. The Templars fell out of favour and were suppressed during the years 1307 to 1311. Following their suppression, Edward II took possession of the temple and gave it to the Knights Hospitaller, who leased it to the colleges of lawyers. These colleges evolved into the Inner and Middle Temples, 2 of the 4 Inns of Court. The other 2 are Gray's Inn and Lincoln's Inn, both just a little to the north of here. Every barrister in England and Wales must, to this day, belong to one of the 4 inns. In 1550, following his break with Rome, Henry VIII disbanded the Knights Hospitaller and the temple once again reverted to the crown. By the early 16th century, the lawyers of Inner and Middle Temple had been well established here, and in 1608 their occupancy was secured by the grant of letters patent from King James I. The 2 Inns of Court were granted the land on condition that they keep up the church and its services, which they do to this day. All around this area we see the various chambers of the practicing barristers. Another fine feature of this area are the gardens. The Templars appointed the first gardener in 1307, and an orchard was established in the 14th century. Shakespeare used it in Henry VI Part 1 as the setting for the entirely fictional meeting between Richard Plantagenet, Duke of York, and John Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, where one selects a white rose and the other a red rose. In 1591 the gardens took on a more formal layout with a terrace and walks. In the early 18th century 3 rectangular lawns and trees were planted and gravel paths established. Direct access to the Thames was lost with the establishment of the embankment in 1870. Plane trees were planted in the Victorian period, and the temple hosted a number of flower shows. During the Second World War, the gardens were turned into allotments. Nowadays, the temple gardens are a quiet oasis in the middle of a busy, bustling city.
The old Bank of England pub resides in the old Law Courts branch of the Bank of England, which operated from 1888 to 1975. The building is Grade 2 listed and was originally constructed in the Italianate style by Arthur Blomfield. It was converted into a pub by Fullers in 1994, who ran it until 2019 when it was taken over by Macmullan's. The exterior is built of grey granite and Portland stone with Doric and Ionic columns and intricate iron gates. The interior of the pub was refurbished in early 2020 but retained many original features like the ornate high ceilings and marble columns. However, the island bar was replaced with a modern metal structure with similar booths alongside. The lower part of the bar with its multiple wooden drawers resembles an old chemist shop counter, which these days is so beloved of antique dealers. Macmullan's have also installed round metal chandeliers with bulbous lamps. There are large windows, and throughout the pub the walls are decorated with historical prints and portraits. There are separate dining rooms just off the main bar area. It is worth climbing these stairs to the mezzanine level where you get a really great view of the interior. The vaults beneath the pub once contained gold bullion, and they're also said to have held the crown jewels for a short period. Now they accommodate bottles of wine and spirits. In the beer garden is a vintage Routemaster bus which had to be craned over the building and into position. and is used as a bar during fine weather and is also available for private hire. The location is also famed for being on the site of the fictional Sweeney Todd's barber shop and Mrs. Lovett's pie shop, and one corner of the main bar area is devoted to the legend, with 2 old barber chairs and a plethora of cutthroat razors in display boxes on the wall. This pub is one of the most stunning pub interiors in London, and while it may not have the charm of some of the nearby old pubs in Fleet Street, it is a grand and impressive site and well worth visiting.
The Royal Courts of Justice, known colloquially as the Law Courts, is a Grade 1 listed building, mainly of Pullman stone, that houses the High Court and Court of Appeal of England and Wales. It was designed in the Gothic revival style by Georgian Street after he won a competition involving 12 architects. Work started in 1873, but it took 8 years to complete due to industrial disputes, finally being opened by Queen Victoria on the 4th of December 1882. It was further extended in 1912, 1968 and 1990. Its facade is well known from the huge number of famous and infamous people who have posed in front of its entrance before, during and after court cases. If you want to investigate further, then you can book a tour of the building. Thomas Twining moved with his family from Gloucester to London in 1684 when he was 9 years old. He served an apprenticeship as a weaver and he became a tea merchant for the East India Company. He purchased Tom's coffee shop in Devereux Court in 1706, where he sold tea as well as coffee. By 1717, he was trading at this site 216 The Strand and beside the Golden Lion, the world's first private tea and coffee shop. Twinings continued to sell tea here and also has a tea bar and a museum. The George was founded as a coffee house in 1723. It became a hotel in 1730 and then later a public house. It was heavily renovated in the early 1920s with the introduction of a multitude of facade, characterised by false beams, half-tinted gables and leaded windows. The facade of the George is particularly imposing with a depiction of George III above the entrance, stained glass in the windows and carvings of monks and beer barrels inside the front window, as well as more eccentric carvings such as what appears to be half-naked men chasing various farm animals. It has a long traditional interior with a wooden panel bar, historical prints on the walls, wooden floorboards and some nicely carved wooden brackets. Towards the rear, partitioned off, is a snug with a portrait of King George I above a ornately carved wooden fireplace. Various historical prints adorn the walls and is perhaps a more intimate area. Located upstairs is a private dining room with its own bar that possesses a traditional and sophisticated decor. It overlooks the Strand and directly opposite is the Law Courts. Past regulars at the George have been Horace Walpole, Oliver Goldsmith and Samuel Johnson, who of course lived nearby. Another regular was the con man Henry Perfect, who rented rooms upstairs in the George. He was the son of a clergyman and forcibly extracted money from unsuspecting people by impersonating a vicar. He was eventually convicted of obtaining money by false pretences and transported to Botany Bay, Australia. The George is a lovely traditional English pub that is well worth visiting.
The Devereux opened as the Grecian Coffee House in 1677 and was a favourite haunt of members of the Royal Society such as Sir Isaac Newton, Sir Edmund Halley and Hans Sloane, as well as the influential writers and politicians Joseph Addison and Richard Steele. In addition, Sarah Mapp, the bone setter, carried out her trade in Epsom and when in London here at the Coffee House. After learning the trade from her father, she established her own practice called Cracked Sally, the one and only bone setter. Mapp's nickname, Crazy Sally, came from her masculine personality and reputation for quarrelling and drinking. Mapp could often be found wandering the country in a drunken state and shouting obscenities. Bone setting was a medical practice used to manipulate and fix musculoskeletal injuries using manual force. She worked on racehorses and on people and had huge success, including fixing the spinal deformity on the niece of Hans Sloane, an achievement which bolstered her fame. In later years she fell out of favour and was sometimes depicted unfairly as a quack, and Hogarth included her in his 1736 engraving, A Consultation of Physicians or the Company of Undertakers, which satirised the medical profession. Sadly, she died in poverty in 1737 in the Seven Dials area of London. The Devereux was refurbished in the Victorian period and reopened as a pub in 1843. About a decade ago it closed for about 3 years, but reopened in March 2019. It's Grade 2 listed and is located in a quiet courtyard in the Middle Temple heart of the legal district. The exterior is stucco face with hanging baskets and an outdoor drinking area furnished with oak barrels. There's a depiction of Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, high up on the front of the building. It has a spacious interior with an island bar, dark wood panelling, booths created by wooden and park glazed partitions, and historical prints of people and of the local area on the walls. Despite being heavily modernised inside, it's still worth visiting. However, be aware that the pub is closed on Sundays. Just a bit.
I just don't think. I don't think he wants it.
Devereux Court is located just south of the Strand and east of Essex Street. It's a quiet area, virtually unchanged since its establishment in the 1670s on the grounds of the former Essex House, a stately home renowned for its expansive gardens. The site had previously been the Outer Temple owned by the Knights Templars. Later, Essex House was built on the site in 1575 and originally named Leicester House, as it had been owned by Robert Dudley, 1st Earl of Leicester, the main favourite of Elizabeth I. Upon Dudley's death, it was inherited by his stepson, Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex, who renamed it Essex House. He had taken over as the main favourite of Elizabeth I after the death of Dudley, and Devereux Court is named after him. Although charismatic, Essex was also a vain and haughty man who made enemies in the Privy Council, notably the wily Robert Cecil, 1st Earl of Salisbury and Secretary of State. He was also an inept soldier, and when, as Lord Deputy of Ireland, his military campaign proved a disaster, despite considerable resources, his reputation suffered and his relationship with the Queen deteriorated. He deserted his post and was placed under house arrest, leading to a nervous breakdown. When Elizabeth failed to renew his patent on sweet wines and he lost his monopoly, his income was severely affected. Becoming desperate, he decided to rebel. On the 7th of February 1601, his followers paid for and attended a performance at the Globe of Shakespeare's play Richard II, importantly including a deposition scene. The next day, Essex led a group of men out of Essex House in a bizarre attempt at a coup against the government. When it failed to attract any support, he was lost. He was arrested, tried for treason and beheaded at the Tower of London. Devereux Court and Essex Street was built by the developer Nicholas Barban. He was the eldest son of the preacher and fifth monarchist, praise God, Barebones. Nicholas Barban was an economist, physician and financial speculator and one of the first proponents of the free market. Following the Great Fire, he became a property developer and helped to pioneer fire insurance and mortgages as a means of financing such developments. Devereux Court and Essex Street was part of this property development. The Edgar Wallace dates back to 1777 and was originally named the Essex Head. The then landlord Samuel Greaves was a former servant of the Thrale family with whom Samuel Johnson had lodged. And with this connection, Johnson and his friend Richard Brocklesby established the Essex Head Club in the pub in 1783. It was partly rebuilt in 1891 and in 1975 the pub was renamed to commemorate the crime writer Edgar Wallace's birth centenary. Enormously popular in his day, Wallace was an incredibly prolific writer. As well as journalism, Wallace wrote screenplays, poetry, historical non-fiction, 18 stage plays, 957 short stories and over 170 novels, 12 in 1929 alone. His works were translated into 28 languages and more than 160 films have been made of his work. In 1928, it was estimated that 1 in 4 books being read in the UK had been written by him. Wallace was the first British crime novelist to use policemen as his protagonist rather than amateur sleuths. His publishers aggressively advertised him as a celebrity writer, king of the thrillers, and he was known for his trademark Trilby, cigarette holder and yellow Rolls Royce. He also created the giant gorilla King Kong in a short story. Sadly, since his death in February 1932, he has slipped into partial obscurity, but many of his books are still available to buy and the pub displays dozens of his novels on shelves. This is a corner pub. In the upper section of the exterior, it has red brick and tall windows. At ground floor level, the pub is painted green with a square panelled glass windows with gilded trim. Inside, there is one downstairs bar with the ceiling covered with a huge collection of beer mats, while the walls are adorned with advertising signs for beers, sherries, port, cigarettes, tobacco and cigars. A staircase in the corner room leads to an upstairs function room with bookshelves and some more information on Edgar Wallace. It's a lovely, quirky pub and a bit of a gem. It's definitely one to visit, but please be aware that the pub is closed at weekends.
Because it's all chambers, man. So all our drinkers are like solicitors, barristers, QCs. I said, I've got enough solicitors to help me out. Yeah.
No pictures, mate. No pictures over here.
Wait, no, okay.
Absolutely fantastic. We just done that in the other pub.
Yeah.
And went like that, and the fellow said, "Don't do that. I'm supposed to."
We've only been here 8 weeks, but it's my wife's mum owns. Wife's mum owns it. She's had it for nearly 20 years, and her uncle ran it for 15 years. But he got really ill with Parkinson's, and for the last 3-4 years, he's sort of gone down. So we took it over here, and it sort of feels back up. We're not going to touch it here at all. But we're just concentrating on that. We've got a really good shed. And the function, we're going to try and push the function in that weekend. We've got filming in here next week. ITV in here. We're shut Monday, Tuesday. We've got security here, so no one's allowed in. But then what we're doing on the Wednesday, all our regulars, we said we're going to throw a puppy in the evening after 6, so it's all free for them. They won't tell us about. They filmed in here before, and they filmed for a season called Split. But it's lawyers and that, so I don't know whether it's season 2. But we've had a couple of other inquiries from filming that as well. New Year's Eve, they want to buy that for New Year's Eve. Or right. No, they want to buy that for like Harley. For what? They want to buy it.
There's been a pub named the Cheshire Cheese on this site since the late 18th century. However, the present pub dates from 1928 from a design by T.H. Noel Parr for the Stile and Winch Brewery, and is Grade 2 listed. It was an example of an improved pub brought about by a desire to reduce the amount of drunkenness associated with Victorian and Edwardian pubs. Noel Parr was an architect of some renown. He is known particularly for his pubs and hotels in West London, such as the Duke of Kent pub in Ealing, which used to be my local when I lived in that area. It's a corner pub comprising 6 stories, which includes a basement and a cellar. The exterior is of London stock brick, built in a neo-Georgian style. The bay windows are an attractive feature and are made up of small leaded panes over larger plate glass panes. The main bar was originally divided into 2, with a public bar on the right and a saloon bar on the left. 2 sets of doors allowed separate access to the saloon and the public bar respectively, and the access door to the saloon bar still carries signage to this effect. An off-sale service would also have been offered via a window on the side street of the pub. There is wooden panelled bar counter. The bar back is of carved wood inset with mirrors, and there is some coloured glazing. Near the bar counter is a panelled cover which gives access to a cask lift. As the cellar is 2 floors below, casks of beer have to be lowered mechanically. There's a lounge cum games room at the basement level, with another bar and a dining room upstairs, with all the floors connected by a dumb waiter. The pub has a traditional feel about it and is well worth a visit.
I'll get me in now, I'm still at work.
The Savoy Tap is situated in a fairly quiet side street off the busy Strand and opposite the King's Chapel of the Savoy, which I covered on my Charing Cross and Strand tour. There was a pub here for over 300 years which went under a variety of names, perhaps most interestingly as the Suckling House. A Suckling House was a tavern primarily serving locally stationed soldiers. There were military barracks on the site of the Savoy during the 17th and 18th centuries, and there are frequent instances of mutiny amongst the soldiers stationed here. Let's just take one 17-year period in the latter half of the 18th century. In 1759, the soldiers mutinied. In 1761, over 200 military prisoners held at the Savoy mutinied. In 1763, East India Company troops stationed here staged a revolt. In 1776, there was another mutiny. Finally, in the early 19th century, the barracks were demolished to make way for development and the approach to the new Waterloo Bridge. The pub was rebuilt in 1926 by J. Quilter for William Young & Co. as the new Savoy Tavern. This was changed to Savoy Tap in 1998 and then to the Savoy Tap in 2018 when it was taken over by Shepherd Neame. The exterior has 1920 stained glass leaded windows at ground floor and first floor levels and some attractive carving on the wood above the window and the door. The pub sign, appropriately as it's so close to the site of the former medieval Savoy Palace, features an image of John of Gaunt, the last owner of the palace before it destroyed in 1381. There is a small bar at ground floor level with wooden panelling on the walls decorated with historical prints of the area and theatre posters associated with the nearby Savoy Theatre. There is a 1920s fireplace and above it a sketch of the auditorium of the Savoy Theatre. There's leather seating around the edge of the room. There's an upstairs function room with a wooden panelled bar and on the walls wooden panelling decorated with historical prints. This is a traditional pub tucked away just off the Strand and has a friendly feel to it.
And you can also like for us, there's a lot of
That's the end of the tour. Both Charing Cross and the Embankment tube stations are about a 5-minute walk one way, whilst the Temple tube station is also a 5-minute walk the other way. I will include directions of our route so you can follow it. Thank you for watching. If you will click like or subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. It's totally free, but it helps to expand the channel. I look forward to seeing you on the next tour. Thank you.